Donald Trump has been ejected from the ballot in Colorado by a 4-3 Democrat majority of judges, and with it, we can see that after going to the Colorado Supreme Court, this will now be going to the Supreme Court of the United States, the highest court in the land, and I fully expect it to get rejected. But why is this so important? Because it's open weaponization of the justice system. It's open weaponization of the political system. And while this has been going on for so long behind the scenes, they're being more blunt and more blatant about it, and with that, you should expect multiple states to follow suit, as we've already seen, as well as multiple states in opposition to try and counter this. And realistically, all this is going to lead to is the nature of acceleration and the bifurcation of the United States, which, as an accelerationist and a secessionist, I'm not entirely against, but that's a conversation for a different day. One thing that I find so incredibly fascinating about this is the fact that so many people always talk about the fact of, oh no, this is the biggest and most important election of our lifetime. And to a degree, they're right. And why are they right? Well, it's for a reason that they don't even realize. It's because the size and scope of government is increasing with every single president that gets elected, which means the caliber of the federal gun that is now pointed at you when your opposition wins presidency is now going to have ever more power if they decide to pull the trigger when they're aiming it at you. But that's something so many people don't even think about, and they just talk about, well, this is the biggest election of our lifetime, because they simply don't like the person who's in their opposition. But what they don't realize is they are right on a fundamental level that they have not even thought of. Now let's go ahead and jump into this video. From the AP, Colorado Supreme Court declares Donald Trump is ineligible for the White House, ruled by a 4-3 majority of Democratic judges. And what's so incredibly fascinating about this is that right when I saw this happen, I knew this wasn't going to be the only stone that was cast into this pond. We go over here to the New York Post. Trump faces calls for removal from California ballot after Colorado ruling. Explore every legal option. Wow. Isn't that just something? Turns out we have to make sure that we are removing your ability to choose in a system built on the factor of you choosing your leader. Because that's democracy, don't you know? We have to make sure that we destroy democracy to save it. That is the standard with which they are purporting. And one thing that I find so incredibly hilarious about all of this is the fact that Donald Trump's just getting hit with what the Green Party, the Libertarian Party, the Independents, and the Socialists have been getting hit with consistently for years. Being ostracized from the field of debate, being told you're not allowed on the ballots, all because you don't meet what is allowed within the spectrum of allowable opinion when it comes to the party standards of either the left or the right. It's amazing to see the fact that now Donald Trump is seeing how screwed up this is, and I guarantee you he won't take any of that away from it. He won't realize the nature of how this is being used against other people, and even if he does, he's not actually going to openly talk about it. And why is that? Because it's not about him. Everyone knows Donald Trump is all about me, and with it, the thing is, one thing that's so incredibly fascinating is he's tied the factor of American success and attacking the deep state to him and his ego, and with it, if he's not successful, I believe it will be a blow to his ego, which I believe is why he is going even harder and harder and harder with the rhetoric currently. Don't know if that's actually true, but it would not surprise me in the slightest. So what's so incredibly interesting about California and the ballot, though? Well, it's the fact that someone like Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, has openly come out against banning Donald Trump from the presidential race in California. He does not want him stripped from the ballot. And why is it? Well, I don't believe it's that Gavin Newsom actually wants Donald Trump running for president. What I do believe is that Gavin Newsom is a slippery, slimy politician, and he knows this looks good on him when he goes to make his foray into presidential politics. There are only 3 people on the Democratic landscape that I can actually see being ushered into that of the role of president for the Democrats, someone that they could really have as a front runner to challenge Donald Trump, even though Joe Biden was solid because Donald Trump would try and throw stuff at him, and Joe Biden's just so mentally aloof, he just like wouldn't even rebuttal. He'd be like, huh? What? Which is the best way you can handle Trump. You just completely basically ignore him because otherwise he's going to bully you into submission. But he can't bully Joe Biden into submission because Joe Biden's not even actually on that stage with him. Joe Biden is mentally somewhere else. His corporeal form may be physically in front of you, but I promise you mentally he is in another dimension. So again, Gavin Newsom, slippery, slimy politician. Why is it so important that he's doing this? Because of the idea of him entering into presidential politics. And who are the 3 people that I could see the Democrats relying on to possibly run as the presidential frontrunner so they could have someone to challenge Donald Trump that isn't Joe Biden, because Joe Biden seems to be an outright mental decay? The fact is, well, this man is an old man being taken advantage of, and realistically, his family should feel horrible for the fact that they're allowing this to happen to him. So on to the 3 people that I think are possible. Hillary Clinton, Michelle Obama, Gavin Newsom. I don't know how that trinity would work out. Maybe it's Hillary Clinton running and Gavin as the vice president. Maybe it's Gavin Newsom running and Michelle Obama as the vice president. I truly don't know. But one thing I am sure of is the fact is that the Democrats have almost no one to run. And the Republicans are only going to be pushing forward someone like Donald Trump. And with that, if Donald Trump is removed from the ballots, well, who's going to be taking those votes? Do you think it's Nikki Haley? Do you think it's Chris Christie? Do you think it's Ron DeSantis? No. It's going to be Vivek Ramaswamy. That is the person who has positioned themselves, if Donald Trump is stripped from the ballot, to be the one person who will truly push forth the MAGA agenda, which is something that's incredibly fascinating because Vivek has not been pulling any punches, and it's very clear that the political class, the media class, they absolutely despise him. And they've even talked about the fact of, much like they did with Larry Elder, calling him the brown face of white supremacy. Could you imagine saying something so ridiculous and actually being serious about it? Well, the journalist class is. Now, one thing we're going to do now is throw it into a journalist who I would argue is serious, someone who's worth listening to and well worth your time. The late, great Glenn Greenwald. My goodness, when I say this man's show was so good they couldn't even allow him onto standard media like YouTube, they had to kick him off and he went to Rumble, go ahead and check it out because my goodness, Glenn is the best at it. He is someone who more so comes from, let's say, the progressive school of thought. He fled the United States so he could be free from censorship. I believe he now lives in Brazil, and with it, this is where he does his show, still talking about things like American politics. I cannot recommend Glenn Greenwald and System Update enough. Let's go ahead and throw it into him.
All 7 judges on the Colorado Supreme Court are obviously Democrats. It's a very blue state. They were appointed by Democratic governors. 4 of them went to Ivy League schools, Yale, Penn, Harvard, and 3 of them went to the University of Denver Law School. So they're all Democrats. You can't say the 4-3 ruling broke down on party lines because there are no party lines. It's a fully Democratic court. The way it broke down was the 4 judges who removed Trump from the ballot all went to Ivy League schools. The 3 judges who dissented and said the court has no right to remove Trump all went to the University of Denver Law School. And I think the reason why that's so interesting and important is because this is something we've been pounding for a long time, which is what's really going on in the United States and the broader Western world is that when 2016 happened and British voters enacted Brexit and left the EU, a huge shock to the Western establishment. And then 4 months later, they had the biggest shock of all, which is that Donald Trump defeated Hillary Clinton to become president of the United States. Western elites went into a panic, and they concluded that they can no longer trust their populations to be free, to have free speech, to vote freely in elections, because when they do, they make the wrong choices. And they need to be controlled. They need to be guided. That's when this whole disinformation industry emerged, funded by billionaires and security state agencies, where all of these people from colleges proclaimed themselves disinformation experts out of nowhere and started to decree what was true and false for people so that we could remove false ideas from the internet so that people weren't contaminated and misled by them anymore. They only would get elite-approved views over the internet. That's what the censorship regime is about. That really emerged after 2016. And now this attempt to put Donald Trump in prison or remove him from the ballot. This is a very elite idea, the idea that the peasants cannot be trusted to be free. And so it's not surprising to me that the division here was between people educated at Ivy League schools on the East Coast and people who went to their local law school in Colorado at the University of Denver. That was the breakdown.
Glenn Greenwald, one of the greats, cannot recommend him enough. Please go give Glenn a follow. Go watch System Update on Rumble live just about every single day. My goodness. Nonetheless, we move on. Here we have the Hill. Dan Patrick suggests taking Biden off the ballot in Texas. Well, it's very clear that the pendulum was going to swing back. How many Republican states are going to be moving to do this? How many Democrat states are going to be moving to remove Donald Trump? And with it, this is only going to create further bifurcation amongst the United States. We just saw that the Texas secession plan was just rolled in through a bill in Texas. So with it, now that's on the docket for future votes. which, as I've already stated, as an accelerationist, this only makes me happy. Because the thing is, the people in Maine shouldn't be living how the people in California dictate. The people in California shouldn't be living how the people in Texas dictate. People in Texas shouldn't be living how people in Oregon mandate. And people in Oregon shouldn't be living how those in Georgia mandate, and so on and so forth. I believe in actual freedom, and with it, it comes with the fact that you have to realize that you do not have the ability to restrict how other people live, just like they don't have the ability to restrict you. And this is the problem with consistently voting for the growth of government, because as I've stated, it only increases the size of the caliber of the federal gun. And then what happens when your opposition gets it? It is now pointed on you, and you are the one who is in threat, and you only added more grain to the cartridge. And with it, now we can see that when they pull that trigger, if they do, it's only going to be more of a detrimental blow to you. And who gave them that power? Who consistently added more and more power? Well, it was you and your kin and your ideals that wanted to just do nothing more than advocate for the growth of the state. We go on here to the town hall. Republicans team up to remove Biden from state ballots. Unfair abuse of power. Isn't that just something? Well, it's an unfair abuse of power if we do it to Joe Biden, but it's not an unfair abuse of power if we do it to Donald Trump. These are the standards set by your established nobility, the people that consider themselves to be your betters. And here we go on to the full list of states wanting to kick Trump off the ballot, where the case stands. Donald Trump is facing challenges to his candidacy in several states after Colorado's Supreme Court removed him from the 2024 primary ballot on Tuesday. The court's 4-3 ruling determined that Trump, the clear frontrunner for the GOP nomination, is ineligible to appear on the state's ballot because of his alleged role in the January 6, 2021 riot at the U.S. Capitol. His speech to his supporters that morning was followed by a violent protest in which rioters illegally entered the Capitol building in an attempt to block Congress from certifying President Joe Biden. All right, and what states do we have? Well, we have Colorado, of course, Arizona, California, Maine, Michigan, Minnesota, Rhode Island, and I guarantee you, there will be more states that throw their head into this ring. Just like there will be more Republican and right-wing states that are throwing their head into the ring to say, well, if you're going to get our guy, then we'll go after your guy, and the bifurcation will only continue, and we will only accelerate towards the cliff. Hopefully we're wearing a hang glider when we reach it. I'm going to go ahead and call it there. Thank you for watching if you got this far. Thumbs up if you liked it. Thumbs down if you didn't. Tell me where I'm wrong in the comment section down below. Stay lovely. Stay great. Tell someone you love them. Peace out.